There is a story, a legend really among the higher beings of reality. A story about a battle that ripped apart universes and threatened to destroy all life. But how could it be true? There are no scars left behind, and surely there would be from such a battle. So most gods and kais just joke about it. Perhaps use it to scare mortals into doing what they want. But it is true. There was a battle and both the fighters survived. But there was a victor who would gladly have finished the job if not for the one duty he would never shirk from again. The prevalence of reality. As the last of his kind, he could not shirk that duty no matter how much he would like to. So his foe beaten back to the reaches of his own twisted level of existence and trapped there. He used the last of his power to undo the damage before it became too far gone for his now limited powers to restore. His powers at a minimal, he entered into a great sleep used by his almost extinct race to restore energy. But he did not leave reality unattended. He left his 2 lieutenants along with his surviving children to watch reality, interfere if they want but nothing extreme, and only go to extremes if multiple dimensions were in danger of being destroyed. So the children spread out and did what they would, bringing death, joy, chaos, and order, whatever they desired, but his lieutenants watched from a citadel floating in the void outside of universes and multiverses, watching for real threats and ready to wake him if necessary. But on this particular day or air night, or perhaps, you know what time was weird in the void, so let's just say that at this moment in void time they were watching a multiverse where an event in the prime and thereby its branches was taking place. Well, gotta admit this doesn't happen too often, a robotic-sounding voice noted. You are correct, the odds of this happening are 0.000000001 in, a deep baritone responded. Yeah, I know the calculations, Guardian. Computer let out a static-like sound that would best be translated as a sigh. Honestly, you would think the boss would have given you some sort of personality or something, rather than just being an emotionless death bot. Yeah, that's the best description I got for you. Guardian did not respond, instead watching the screen showing the inside of the mountain home where the miracle of birth was taking place. This term confused Guardian. There is nothing miraculous about it. It was a completely natural process with no divine intervention whatsoever. He or computer could interfere at their leisure, but there was no need. Though there was no doubt this birth was uncommon. Triplets, computer muttered. Can't remember the last time this happened, definitely when the boss was still awake. Guardian stood seemingly alone on a floating platform in a seeming endless darkness, save for the thousands of screen sizes varying from millimeters to meters. For the most part, the screens flashed through images too quickly for the human eye to follow. But the screen in front of him showed the scene in the sheltered home. A small glowing blue cube floated up beside Guardian. A pixelated face formed eyes, eyebrows, and a mouth. So why are you so focused on this? Computer raised a pixelated eye. I mean, the boss would be considering his history with another universe like this one. Knowing him, he'd probably blow up the whole multiverse before this birth finished though. He mentally winced at his friend/boss's extreme tactics. Guardian's oddly shaped head, flat-topped and cylindrical part of the way down but narrowed in a low cone-like shape to the neck, did not turn, but the drone spoke. It is a rarity, therefore I wish to study it for the lifetimes of the half-breeds. Although it shall not take up my full attention, of course. Computer looks at the screen and narrows his pixelated eyes. Let's see here, the first boy seems to be a bit more scion, like highest power level. The girl has a fair amount of ESP, might be able to have visions with that. And the third boy, him, the common factor, yep, there's that untapped power. If that got let loose, his brother would be a fly. Computer let out another static-like sigh. Just like the last time this happened. Guardian already knew this information but did not bother to try to interrupt computer. It was better to just let him ramble on about stuff. Interrupting him usually amounted to a long-winded speech about how underappreciated he was, and how there should be temples across reality to him with trillions coming to each daily, which was physically and temporally impossible even if the temple was the size of the average life-supporting planet, Guardian noted. Computer stared at the screen for another moment before turning away. And nothing to worry about, sure, the triplet thing is rare, usually it's just the one and maybe twins, but that's a rarity. But anyway, nothing in any of the set that will allow there to be massive amounts of interuniversal travel, save for that time machine stuff in about 6 or 7 years' time, but that won't be anything to worry about. The technology god paused. Okay, maybe it is a bit to worry about. I'll look into it myself when it gets to that point. Guardian watched the screen as the triplets were snuggled in blanket. It noted a slight irregularity in its base programming and filed the information away for dealing with at a later date. You are correct. Just another 3 Scion-human hybrids in just another universe. Nothing important. The Watchers of Reality had no idea just how wrong they were. The whole of reality would one day feel the repercussions of this mistake. But for the time being, 3 little Scion Herbert children slept soundly in a cozy home on the mountain with their mother, father, and grandfather watching over them nearby. Mount Paseo was peaceful this time of year. Birds sang in the trees, animals ran through the forests as the wind whistled. It was quite a place out in the wilderness, free from the burdens of civilization. Serene and calm, not much causes disturbances up here. Goku, slow down. Save for the local demiscience, that is. Goku ran through the forest with his tunic off, laughing happily. Come on guys, you're so slow. He giggled as he sped off further down the path. Left in his dust, an identical-looking boy wearing a green and yellow tunic and a similar-looking girl wearing a pink and purple tunic chased after him, tails trailing behind each of them. Goji gasped for air. How did he get so much faster than us? We used to all be the same speed. Gohan huffed. He goes out and does this while we stay and study. Goji pouted. I know that I was being rhetorical. Keep in mind she's 4. Gohan narrowed his eyes a bit as they continued jogging. I don't think that how you say it, Goji, he said to his sister. Said sibling got a bit mad at that and skidded to a halt with Gohan following a few seconds later. She glared at him. So how do you say it, Mr. Smarty Pants? She asked, glaring daggers in a similar manner to her mother. Gohan stood there for a minute and put his finger on his chin and tried to recall how to say the vocab word. Unfortunately, it was from a few units ago, so he couldn't quite recall. I don't know, but it still didn't sound right. Goji sighed. Whatever, we'll look through our language homework. When we get back now, let's catch up with Goku before he gets too far away. She shouted out the last part, pointing frantically before taking off again. Gohan followed after, hot on her tail. After a few more minutes of running, they stopped at a clearing in the forest and started to catch their breath. When they could breathe normally again, they looked around. Gohan was the first to speak. Where is he? He started turning in circles, trying to spot his brother. Goji opened her mouth to respond but was cut short at a sudden noise from above. The sibling duo had just enough time to look up before their brother came down on top of them from the trees. Ha! You two didn't even know I was there. He laughed as he got up from the ground. Goji and Gohan soon followed to their feet and picking up their hats. Goji was the first to speak, saying, Well, if all you can do is hide in trees, then you don't have much to be proud of, do you? She smirked. Goku narrowed his eyes and said, Well, all you two do is study all day. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't even know what the sky looked like. As he watched his siblings argue, Gon came to a sudden realization and started glancing around frantically and waving his arms, trying to get their attention. Goku, Goji, stop arguing, we have something bigger to worry about. The 2 eldest looked at their brother in confusion. Goku asked, What are you talking about? We're fine, there are no animals around, and if there were we would see them coming. We're in a clearing. Gohan got straight to the point. And just where exactly is this clearing? He asked. Goku's eyes widened, as did Goji's, and they spoke in unison, Oh, before quickly proceeding to panic with Gohan joining in. Meanwhile, at the Sun household, Chi-Chi was busy making lunch when she heard Goku calling, dragging a massive tree trunk behind him. She stepped outside to greet him. Hi, Chi-Chi, he said, dropping the tree on the ground with a massive thunk. When's lunch? She smiled at her husband's appetite and said, Let me get the kids, then we'll eat. And she went back into the house and towards the triplets' room. When she opened the door, she was quite surprised to find it completely empty and the window open. She sighed as she saw Goku's hat and green and blue tunic on his bed. She expected this kind of behavior from him, but from Gohan and Goji too? Great, now he was corrupting them. She went back outside and told Goku, Your children have decided to go on a little adventure through the woods. Go find them, then we can eat. Goku looked quite put off by this. But Chi-Chi, he whined, Can't we eat then? I'll go and find them? Chi-Chi was angered by this and shouted, The kids are out in the woods doing who knows what, who knows where. They could get eaten alive. Or fall down a hole. Or, she trailed off before shaking her head and reiterated, Just go and find them. Then we can eat. Goku nodded solemnly before crying, Nimbus, and jumping into the air to land on his fluffy transportation. He sped off into the woods looking for his children. For most people, looking down on the forest from the air searching for someone was near impossible, but for Goku it was as easy as counting to 10. Well, if he could actually count to 10, that is. Said children were currently running in circles in the clearing, panicking as they tried to figure out what to do. Finding them was rather easy for Goku thanks to their shouts of panic. Not to mention the birds were all flying away from that area of the woods due to the ruckus being caused. Daddy! They cried out simultaneously as he touched down and ran up to him, hugging his legs tightly. He smiled at the 3-4-year-olds hugging his legs. There you guys are. You had your mom worried, you know? Now let's go home. Then we can go meet Daddy's friends, okay? The triplets nodded at this. Goku looked excited. He had heard his father talk about his friends and thought they sounded cool, but Gohan and Goji looked a bit nervous at the idea of meeting new people. Meanwhile, a new threat was fast approaching Earth, and the triplets' happy lives were about to change very drastically forever. Far from where we were last chapter and relatively the same distance as the last was to where the first chapter was, a farmer was happily going about his peaceful life of good honest labor and was just thinking to himself how lucky he was to be alive when suddenly, boom! Said farmer dropped his tool in shock as the animals scurried away from where what appeared to be a meteorite had just landed. A trail of smoke drifted up into the sky. What was heck was that? He stuttered as he stood there shaking in shock. He gulped and gathered himself. I better go check it out. The unlucky farmer hopped into his truck and drove to the crash site. He parked a few meters away from the edge of the crater. For some reason he felt the strange urging to grab his gun. So he took his shotgun and got out of the car and crept toward the edge of the crater and looked in. He was very surprised to see, instead of a hunk of smoking rock, a smooth metal pod with a round window. He was even more surprised as the pod opened up and a tall figure with incredibly long spiky black hair and strange-looking armor stepped out of the pod. The alien looked around, an angry expression appearing on his face. After about 20 seconds of this, he clenched his fist and angrily declared, Gah! Kakarot has failed us. This planet is still teeming with life. The poor farmer, who was at this point quite a bit confused as to who this Kakarot was and what it was he had failed at doing exactly, raised his shotgun at the alien and said, Hey you! You own my property, state your business or get. The alien focused his attention on the farmer and his angry expression turned into a smirk. My, what do we have here? He asked. A local perhaps? What's your power level, little human? He clicked a device on the side of his face that had a screen that wrapped over his eye. The device beeped and made some noises before stopping. A power level of 5? The alien's smirk widened as he slowly started walking forward. The farmer, who was at this point quite terrified, backed up toward his truck with fear bubbling up inside of him. And just what are you going to do to me with such a pathetic power level? The alien asked as he came to a stop, standing menacingly with a dangerous look in his eye. The farmer stuttered for a second before shouting, Arg, I'll do this! And he fired his shotgun at the menacing figure. Faster than the farmer's eyes could follow, the alien moved his hand and grabbed the bullet right out of the air. Oh, it seems you've dropped this, the alien said nastily. He have it back. He flicked it back at the farmer, it going straight through his spinal column, killing him instantly and going through the truck behind him, causing the engine to explode somewhat, leaving it smoking. The alien's smirk now disappeared now that the fun had ended. If the average power level is even 10 points above that farmer, then Kakarot should have had no trouble wiping out all life on this planet. Why then did he fail? As he pressed his scouter again, Raditz looked out over the fields. Well, perhaps I should find him and ask him. He lifted off into the air and flew off toward the highest power level he had detected. At this moment, in the middle of the ocean, a jetcopter approached a small island with a small house and a few trees on it. As it landed, a woman with short blue hair stepped out, looked at it and smiled and reminiscing for a moment, before walking up the door. The door was already opened, but she knocked on it anyway and said, Hey guys! To the trio within, which consisted of an old bald man with a beard and sunglasses, a short bald man in a martial arts GI who had no nose and 6 dots on his forehead, and a bald sea turtle, which to be fair would look pretty weird with hair. The vertically challenged bald man, whose name was Krillin, smiled happily and exclaimed, Bulma! Loudly the turtle and old bald man were also happy to see her, but the old man, Rashi, was happy to see her for a rather different reason and went up greet her. "Oh Bulma, it's been such a long time. Ming, if I give you a hug?" And hugged her breasts. "Ooh me, you haven't changed at all." Bulma, face turning red, closed her eyes, then exploded, hitting Rashi on the head, knocking him over and shouting loudly. "And I see you haven't changed either, you lecherous old man." She stomped his foot down and stood there fuming. Rashi sat up and rubbed the back of his head, saying, "Hey, I was just letting you know I was happy to see you." Krillin and Turtle stood, or in Turtle's case lay, staring at the scene, sweat dropping, before Krillin smiled sheepishly and said, "Well, it looks like things haven't changed too much." During these happenings at Kame House, a green man wearing a turban and cape as well as a purple fighting GI stood on the edge of a plateau in a wasteland, trying to come up with a new plot to kill his nemesis Goku. His name was Piccolo, and he was born to avenge his father King Piccolo by killing son Goku. He had failed at the 23rd martial arts tournament, and due to the destruction their fight had caused, the tournament had not reopened its gates since then. As he stood there, he suddenly felt a something. He turned around in shock, eyes wide as he stared at the sky. "What kind of monstrous power is that?" he asked himself aloud. "Could it be Goku?" After a few more seconds, he said, "No, there is no way Goku could have gotten that strong without me noticing. But still, who or what is that?" His question was answered as Raditz landed on the opposite side of the plateau from him. He stared at Piccolo for a moment before saying, "Well, you as hell aren't Kakarot, but you clearly aren't of this planet either, even if your power level wasn't so high." "Look, buddy," Piccolo said, trying to remain calm despite the fear that gnawed at his stomach like a starved raccoon. "I don't want any trouble." Raditz smirked at him and said, "Well, that's too bad, because I do." Piccolo, realizing his danger, reacted quickly, and with a shout let loose a powerful attack point blank on Raditz. His relief was short-lived as the smoke cleared to reveal Raditz rubbing his upper lip. "My, that was impressive, it actually seared a few of my leg hairs," he mocked. He raised his hand and it began to glow. "Now then, let me show you a real attack." But before he could launch his attack, his scouter beeped and his attention to Piccolo lost. He leaped in the air and hung there suspended, reading his scouter. "A higher power level," he muttered. "The chances of this being Kakarot." He looked down at our green friend and called, "Well, consider yourself lucky. I have more important things to do with my time." He then flew off in a flash of light. Piccolo fell to his knees panting. This guy, just what the hell was he? He grimaced as he realized his best bet was to follow him and see what he could learn when he found this Kakarot he was looking for. Meanwhile, back at Kame House, Master Rashi was off the floor and the quad was chatting about how life had been since they had last seen each other. Krillin then made the mistake of asking, "Hey Bulma, you wouldn't happen to know where Yamcha is, would you?" He glanced unknowing of the fire he had just sparked. "I mean, we figured he would be coming with you." Bulma once again turned red and crossed her arms, hands squeezing them. "Ugh, that man, he canceled our date for his stupid baseball game. I didn't even bother telling him we were going to be here today." Krillin and Rashi backed up a bit, well aware of how vicious Bulma's fury was. "I was so mad I kicked him out, and you know what?" she exclaimed. "I didn't even bother to tell him we were going to be here today." "Huh, I can't see why Yamcha would cheat on a girl like you," Rashi said, hobbling closer. Bulma glared at him. "Don't even think about it, Rashi," she said with fire in her eyes. Rashi immediately back up. "You who?" they heard called from outside. As one, their eyes widened and together exclaimed, "Goku!" before running outside to greet their old friend. When they got out there, they were surprised to see Goku there smiling, saying, "Hey guys!" This in itself was not surprising. No, what was surprising was the fact that he had a small boy in a yellow and green tunic with a red hat in his arms, an identical-looking boy in a green and blue tunic with an orange hat standing next to his leg, and a girl bearing similarities to the boys wearing a pink and purple tunic and an orange hat. Krillin was the first to speak. "Hey Goku, what's up with the kids?" he asked. "You taking on babysitting or something?" Goku smiled and gave a light chuckle. "No. These are my kids." His friends stared back at him in shock. "Your kids?" "Yep." Goku smiled, seemingly oblivious to his friends' utter shock at the idea their carefree and childish friend could have kids of his own. He then put down Gohan next to his siblings. He smiled. Why don't you three introduce yourselves? He asked the kids. The trio, even Goku, lined up and gave a quick bow. After straightening, they introduced themselves. My name's Goku. I'm son Goji. She shot a quick glare at her slightly older brother. I'm son Gohan. Goku's friend group got the memo and did a quick bow back. Bulma was the first to regain use of her voice. So these are your kids, Goku? So how old are you guys? Goji held up 4 fingers. We 4. Krillin blinked in surprise. So triplets, huh? Well, that's not very common. So you guys want to be fighters like your dad when you grow up? IDO, Goku immediately shouted, a big smile on his face. Gohan said, Mom says I'm going to be a scholar and I do like reading so. Goji crossed her arms and huffed. Mommy says I'm going to be a good housewife, but that doesn't sound like fun. I would rather be a fighter or a scholar than a housewife. Her voice slowly getting higher and louder as she went on. Oh, Krillin said, a bit taken aback by the answers. Well, that's nice, I guess. Gohan and Goku had now noticed the ocean and went to go check out the waves, while Goji had noticed Turtle and went over to him. Yeah, Goku said, standing with his friends. Chi-Chi doesn't want them to be fighters, though Goku seems to be really interested in it. Goji seems to want to do anything that doesn't involve being a housewife, but Gohan really does like books, but maybe when he gets older he'll be interested. It was then that Bulma noticed something about the triplets. Ahayam Goku, do they have T-tails? She stuttered on the last word. Yep, Goku said with a smile. Just like me when I was a kid, remember? Krillin paled. Yeah, I sure remember. An image of a gigantic raging monkey appeared in his mind. Master Roshi took this time to ask, Goku, have you ever let them see the moon? Huh? Goku questioned, confused. You know, have you ever let the kids outside while the moon is full? Roshi elaborated. Goku thought for a moment. No, we normally go to bed pretty early. His friends now let out a small sigh of relief while Goku stayed oblivious to the true meaning of their questions. Krillin, his fear now relieved, asked Goku, Hey, how have you been doing anyway? You hear from Piccolo in the past 8 years. Goku shook his head. No, but sometimes I sense him training out in the desert. I haven't been training as much as I used to, though. He picked up a rock and tossed it up in the air. Catching it, he threw it at the ocean, and it left a long path of disturbed water as it flew out of sight. Roshi shook his head. Well, could have fooled me, you seem as strong as ever. Goku flexed his arm a bit. Yeah, I guess you're re-dash. He cut off and stared into the distance. That power, what is it? Goku stuttered. Krillin looked confused and asked, Goku, what are you talking about? I sense it too, Roshi said. And Goku's right, it is massive. Guys, my women's intuition isn't picking up anything. I'm sure you're imagining things, Bulma said. Krillin then gasped and staggered. Wait, I'm getting it too now. Oh, holy smokes, is that Piccolo? Kids, come here, Goku ordered firmly, and the triplets came over to their father looking a bit confused and nervous. This was their dad. He was the strongest man alive. Why was he acting like this? Goku now responded to Krillin. No, that's not Piccolo, this is much stronger and his power, it's terrible. Krillin covered his eyes and stared out over the water. I don't see any dash. Then he saw a small dot on the horizon. Wait, now I see something. Suddenly it or he was there. The battle-armored figure touched down on the beach and smirked. So I've finally found you, Kakarot. Raditz had arrived. The island's current residents blinked in confusion. Finally Krillin managed. Kakarot? What is that, some sort of vegetable? Raditz now scowled. Kakarot, what is this? Why haven't you completed your mission? The triplets were quite frankly terrified at current events, but Goku still tried to keep his cool. Kinda. At the very least, he figured he could look tough for his little brother and sister. Still, he was trembling pretty badly. Bulma, being the genius she is, managed to pick up on the fact that Kakarot was named and said, Hey look buddy, there's no one here by the name of Kakarot, so butt off. Raditz looked surprised at the tough act from an earthling woman before scowling again and glaring at Goku. Kakarot, explain now. Goku blinked. Wait, are you talking to me? But my name's not Kakarot, it's Goku. Raditz blinked and his scowl deepened. Don't tell me you've forgotten? Krillin, now feeling a bit tougher, walked forward and said, "Now look here, we don't want any of whatever this is. Also, there is no one here by the name of Kakarot, so go on shoo." He now made a shooing gesture with his hands. Raditz glared at the dwarf air vertically challenged fighter. Goku, sensing the danger, shouted, "Krillin, look out!" Raditz's tail lashed out and sent Krillin sailing into Kame House. "Krillin!" Goku cried out at his friend's victimism and turned back to Raditz and cried out in shock. You have a tail," he stuttered out. "Gore, tell me, Kakarot, did you ever hit your head as small child?" Raditz asked. "Look, I already told you my name's not Kakarot. My name is Goku," he firmly restated. "Just answer the question," Raditz shouted. Goku felt Goji bury her face in his pant leg as Gohan clutched at his leg tighter. "Bulma, Krillin, take Gohan and Goji inside. Go can go with your siblings." Gohan and Goji, however, wouldn't let the adults bring them inside after they pried them from their father's leg, and Goku stubbornly refused to go in. Deciding to try and keep this new foe calm for fear his children would be the next target, he answered, "Yes, I did. When I was really little, I don't really remember it, but I have a scar where I hit." "Well, that explains a lot," Bulma muttered under her breath. Raditz let out a groan and briefly face-palmed. "Well, I wasn't expecting to give a history lesson when I got here, but looks like I don't have much of a choice." Raditz now gave a small smirk. "You are not of this world, Kakarot. You are a scion of the planet Vegeta. Admittedly, Vegeta was destroyed by asteroids some time ago, but the scion are not quite extinct yet." The group of friends gasped and stared in shock at Raditz, too stunned to talk. "We scions are a warrior race. We scour the known universe looking for habitable planets," Raditz continued. "When we find one, we removed the indigenous life and then sell it to the highest bidder. For stronger worlds, we send our warriors to take out the native lifeforms, but for weak worlds like this one, we send our children." Bulma, now angry, managed to get over her shock and shouted, "What kind of monsters are you sending little children out like that?" Raditz laughed. "Foolish Earthwomen. There are few wild things more dangerous than a scion child." Goku now growled, "No, I'm not one of you. You're nothing but space pirates. Maybe I was born a scion, but my name is Goku and Earth is my home. Now, who are you?" Yes, well, I suppose I should give a proper introduction." Raditz's smirk grew. "Hello, my name is Raditz, and I'm your big brother." What? Goku got out. "Yes, I am your older brother, and it is quite a shame you forgot about your mission. This planet is quite nice. We could have made a good deal off it. You should have been able to do it pretty quickly with such a big moon." "What are you talking about?" Goku asked angrily. Raditz suddenly realized his brother was missing a limb. "Kakarot, what happened to your tail?" he shouted. "Without it you can access your true power." "I had it removed a long time ago," Goku said. "Gah. Look, Kakarot, the reason I came to get you is because the rest of us have run into a particularly strong planet and we could use the extra help." His scowl returned. "He does that a lot, doesn't he? But I fear this planet has made you too weak. So tell you what, kill 100 humans and return to me by this time tomorrow, and I won't just kill off all life myself." "No!" Goku shouted. "I would never do that." "No? Raditz's eyes traveled to where Krillin, Bulma, Goku, Gohan, and Goji stood. "Tell me, Kakarot, are those your children? They do have tails after all." Goku's eyes widened before narrowing. "You stay away from them," he warned as he got into a fighting stance. Suddenly Raditz was behind him, and as Goku turned to face him, he was kicked into the air and landed at the water's edge. "Daddy!" The triplets screamed, and Goku and Gohan raced to their father's side, but Goji was unable to get out of Krillin's strong grip. "No, kids, get inside," Goku warned. The brothers ignored that, however, but were suddenly plucked off the ground, their hats falling off. "Okay, Kakarot, let's make a deal. Either you kill 100 humans by tomorrow or I take your children here in your place," Raditz told Goku. "Don't hurt them," Goku said as he struggled off the ground. "Oh, don't worry, I won't hurt my nephews. And tell you what, I'll leave my niece back there for now," Raditz said with amusement. "Let us go, you big meanie," Goku yelled as he swung wildly while hanging in the air. "I suggest you get started, Kakarot. Until tomorrow then, he cackled as he lifted off into the air and then flew off. Daddy! Gohan cried out as Goku continued to try to escape his captor's grasp. Goku finally managed to stand and reached out toward the disappearing form. He let loose a shout, and "Oh, come back!" Goku stared off after where his so-called brother had just flown away with his sons. "I need to go after them," he said with determination. "We're with you, Goku," Master Roshi said. "Right, Krillin?" he asked, looking at the bald monk. Krillin paled and stuttered a bit before looking down and thinking, "Oh, who am I kidding? Goku's saved my butt plenty of times, but I'm not sure how useful I can be. But I can try." "No, guys," Goku suddenly said, snapping Krillin out of his thoughts. "You two have both been brought back with the Dragon Balls already. If you die, it's for real this time." He walked over to Goji, who was just staring blankly out at the sea. "Goji, sweetie." She blinked and looked up at her father, and then suddenly she burst out in tears. "They're gone," she cried into her father as he kneeled down to her level. "They're gone," she repeated. "That mean man's going to kill them, and then he's going to kill us, and then everyone else," she bawled. "No, he won't," Goku promised. "I will get your brothers back and stop him from hurting anyone, honey, believe it." "I highly doubt that," a voice called from above. The group glanced up in surprise. Floating there with his cape billowing in the wind was Piccolo. "Oh great," Krillin complained. "Now we have another problem." "Oh shut up," Piccolo told him, and Krillin backed away nervously. Piccolo then turned to Goku. "Listen, Goku. For once I'm not here to kill you. That alien, that scion." Piccolo paused. "You can't beat him. Not by yourself," he added after Goku opened his mouth with a comeback. "As much as I hate to say it, I don't stand a chance against him either. Which is why I propose an alliance." Goku's eyes widened in surprise. Bulma looked angry. "Yeah right, you'll probably just attack him while his guard is down." Piccolo smirked at this. "Oh, I would love to, but I can't beat this scion either." His look hardened. "Believe me, Goku, there would be no such team-up if it wasn't necessary, but this world is mine to conquer and rule, and mine alone." "So then we team up and afterwards go back to the way things were?" Goku asked. Piccolo again smirked. "Glad we could understand each other." Goku looked at his friends. "Guys, I need you to watch Goji." He looked at his daughter, who looked like she wanted to protest, her eyes still red. "Goji, I know you want to help, but I would feel better knowing you're safe. I promise I'll get your brothers and everything will be okay." Goji still looked like she wanted to argue, but looked down after a moment. "Okay, Daddy." She looked up again and then hugged his leg. "I love you, Daddy." Goku placed a hand on her head. Her hat had fallen off during her tantrum, and ruffled her hair a bit. "I love you too, sweetie. I'll be back soon." "Oh, enough of the cutesy stuff," Piccolo interrupted their moment. "Let's go, Goku, before I change my mind." Goku nodded, then looked to the sky, put his hands to his mouth and shouted, "Nimbus!" Almost immediately the little cloud came putting along. Goku jumped in the air, did a flip, and landed neatly on it. He grinned at Piccolo. "You sure you can keep up with me, Piccolo?" "Please," Piccolo said. "My method of travel is a bit more advanced than yours." He floated up into the sky next to Goku and said, "Try to keep up," then flew off with Goku hot on his trail. Bulma went to the sniffling Goji and picked her up, while Krillin collected the kids' hats and put Goji's on her head. Master Roshi stared off into the distance where the two had flown off, thinking to himself, "Those two working together. Amazing. They have got to be the strongest team in the world." Meanwhile, Uncle Raditz was not having a fun day. Not at all. Things had started off well enough. He had arrived at the planet his little brother was supposed to have purged completely fine with no ship malfunctions. But when he stepped out, he found the planet was still teeming with life, and from there things had just gone downhill. He had discovered another alien on the planet who was utterly pathetic, and then when he found his brother, it was only to discover he was just as pathetic. Man, it felt good to say that about someone else. But then he discovered that his brother had completely forgotten his mission. What a failure. And oh, how ironic he so closely resembled their father Bardock, who was a near legend in the PTO for how even a third class like him had risen to almost the power level of the king. But Kakarot was just pathetic, refusing to hurt a single human. Not to mention now he had to deal with Kakarote's half-breed brats. You're a jerkface. Oh, what fun. He brought them to where his ship had landed and was now facing the two. He regarded his nephews. One of them was a complete, just wouldn't shut up. He was certain that was the human blood in him. The other, however, was trying to act tough. Hence the jerkface comment. However, the brat was still trembling, but at least he was trying. Raditz could relate to that. He decided this one was his favorite. He pinched the bridge of his nose. What was he thinking? Taking his nephews like that? Real smart move, Raditz. Now you gotta deal with these two until tomorrow. He should have just taken one, or maybe his niece. Hopefully she would have been quieter. He winced as the crying got louder. You whiny brat. Shut up, he shouted at the crybaby one. Unfortunately, this just made him cry even louder than before. Why don't yell at Gohan, jerkface? Maybe this will help. You two need to understand exactly what you're dealing with here. He picked up the farmer's truck in one hand and then used his key to destroy it. This managed to shut Gohan up as well as cause the wannabe tough guy to fall backwards in surprise. Finally, now listen up, brats. You're going to be waiting here with me until tomorrow after your father kills 100 humans. From then, I'll decide what to do with you, Raditz told the brothers. This got Gohan crying again and the other to start mouthing off again. Raditz, having had enough, decided to put the two in his pod. Finally some quiet, he said out loud to himself, a habit he had acquired years ago doing one-man purges. Having no one to talk to save the locals who were normally screaming, "You monster!" and "murderer." And other self-esteem-lowering terms could do things to a man's mind, or a woman's mind, basically any individual. Suddenly his scouter started beeping. He muttered under his breath as he pressed a button on the side. What? He shouted in shock. A power level of 720. Within 50 meters. He followed his scouter until it landed on the pod. What the hell? He asked. He double-checked the reading. One of the brats was at a power level of 10, but the other was the one had a power level 710. God, this thing is busted, he told himself. No way that could be right, he thought. He turned away again only to be distracted by it going off again. Now what? A power level of 650? This thing is definitely on the fritz. But as the power level got closer, his eyes widened. No, not 650, but 2 power levels. He stared into the distance. One is a power level of 330. Kakarote has a power level of 330, but he wouldn't be coming here. He turned his scouter off. Damn thing is completely haywire. How would Kakarote even know where I am? A few moments later, he was greeted by Kakarote and the green man from earlier. So Kakarote, what are you doing here so soon? I don't suppose you managed to kill 100 humans and came here to tell me? He said cockily, but silently he was reeling. The scouter was right, but that means it wasn't broken. How could either of Kakarote's brats have a power level of 710? I'm here for my sons, Raditz. We don't have to fight, just give them to me, and I'll let you leave in peace, Goku demanded. Sorry, Kakarote, but that's not how it works. But if you're so sure, I guess it's my job to beat the lesson into you, little brother, Raditz countered. You caught me by surprise before. This time will be different. Also, my name's not Kakarote, it's Goku. Goku raised his voice at the end. A loud thumping sound distracted the two scions, and they looked to see that Piccolo had taken off his turban and cape. He cracked his knuckles. Much better, I feel much lighter. Oh yeah, Piccolo, I forgot that you wear weighted clothes, Goku said and proceeded to take off his own weighted garb as well. Raditz's eyes narrowed through his scouter, having seen both power levels jump a decent percentage with the loss of the weighted training gear. Well then, Raditz said, it looks like your power levels are more or less equal, so tell you what, he smirked. Why don't you both come at me at once? You might even be able to give me a decent workout. And with that, Goku and Piccolo charged him with shouts. Raditz was suddenly behind them and knocked them both to the ground, but they sprang back up and leaped at him. So he flew into the air. They altered course and soared up at him. Raditz then charged a double Sunday attack and shot it down at both of them. Goku cried out in surprise and Piccolo let out a small gasp as the blasts came by. Damn, that was a close one. You alright, Pico? Goku cut off and stared in shock at the stump of Piccolo's arm. Raditz landed and laughed loudly. Haha, have you seen my arm? It's green, can't miss it, ahahaha. Goku, we can't win like this, Piccolo said. I might have an attack, but I need you to distract him for a little while. Can you do it with one arm? Goku asked. Yeah, don't worry about me, though you have a bigger problem. It's funny, though I was always planning on using this on you. Funny how things work out, Goku said and then charged at Raditz again. Piccolo put 2 fingers to his forehead and began charging his attack. Goku threw a series of blows at Raditz, the latter either blocking or dodging every last one of them. He then kicked Goku up into the air. Goku cupped his hands and began chanting. Kami, a glow started to form between his hands. Raditz scouter beeped. What, it's over 1,000? It beeped again and he turned to Piccolo. Him too. HME Goku continued the glow, getting more intense. They can raise and lower their power levels as they please, Raditz declared. Goku finished and unleashed the powerful beam at Raditz. Raditz, realizing there was some danger to be had from this attack, to the sky trying to get away. But the beam followed him no matter what maneuvers he pulled. He eventually stopped on the ground and brought his hand up, bracing it with his other arm. All right, let's have it, he shouted. The beam hit with a mighty explosion. When it cleared, Raditz stood there breathing heavily, his hand thoroughly singed. Goku stared in shock. No way, though that would at least hurt him a little. My little brother, I am surprised, I didn't think you had it in you. Suddenly his scouter went off yet again. He turned to where Piccolo stood in shock. No way, with that power level, that attack could actually kill me. Special beam cannon, Piccolo yelled and let loose the attack at Raditz. The beam created a cloud of smoke where Raditz stood, and off in the distance it hit a mountain, creating an even larger cloud. When the smoke cleared, Raditz was still standing, but his shoulder plate was broken and his shoulder seared. He dodged it, Piccolo stammered in shock. Raditz, now thoroughly done with it, started ranting at the two. Goku landed next to Piccolo and asked, Do you have enough energy for another one of those attacks? Yeah, but what's the use, he'll just dodge it again. Goku looked him in the eyes. I have an idea. While the fight outside had been going on, 2 little 4-year-old Scion hybrids were cooped up in a space pod. Gohan, it's okay. Goku tried to calm down his slightly younger brother. Daddy's outside, you heard him, he'll get us out of this. But what if he can't? Gohan said, tears in his eyes, and his fists clenched. What if he gets hurt? He won't, he's the strongest guy in the world. Goku told his brother, putting a hand on his shoulder only to pull it away quickly. Gohan's shoulder was incredibly warm. Before he could say anything, they heard their father crying out in pain outside. Daddy! They cried. Goku started banging on the glass, trying to get it open, while Gohan started shaking in rage. Suddenly he exploded upward, destroying the pod and tossing Goku across the crater, while screaming, Leave my daddy alone! Raditz turned in shock at his little crybaby nephew as he suddenly came flying at him, slamming into his chest, damaging his armor further and knocking him away from Goku. Gohan landed on the ground and Goku partially pushed himself up in shock. Gohan, how did you? Daddy, Gohan said, coming over to his father. Goku then heard Raditz getting up and said, No, Gohan, leave. Get away. But Gohan wouldn't leave his father, and then Raditz was over them. Dumb brat! He shouted and backhanded Gohan across the field. Goku, having gotten out of the crater, rushed toward his brother and started trying to help him get up. Raditz, wait, Goku said, struggling to drag himself. He's just a kid, don't hurt him. He's also one of the few warriors to manage to damage me, Raditz said angrily, but secretly thinking, I can't have yet another Scion stronger than me, especially a crybaby brat like this. He then raised his hand and sent a blast toward where the brothers were. Goku noticed it almost as soon as Raditz sent it, and realizing the danger, pushed Gohan out of the way, not even thinking of the consequences. A second later, he was consumed by the blast, leaving nothing but dust. The effects of Raditz's action happened almost immediately. Gohan cried out and clutched his head before collapsing on the ground, curling up into a fetal position and holding his head. Goku cried out as if he had been struck again. Piccolo gave a gasp of surprise and Raditz's eyes widened, realizing he had hit the wrong target. Several miles away, Aboard a Capsule Corp transport, Goji gave a similar reaction to her slightly younger brother, causing the vehicle's other passengers to start in alarm. "Huh?" Bulma questioned. As Krillin picked up the little girl as best he could. "Goji, what's wrong? What happened?" The little girl didn't give an actually answer, instead just quietly repeating, "Gone, gone, gone." Bulma looked at Krillin and Rashi, who just returned her worried look. Back on the battlefield, Raditz got over his momentary surprise. Well, not the one I was aiming for, but nonetheless easily enough remedied. He took aim at Gohan, who was still in fetal position, but before he could even think about charging his ki, he found himself in a full Nelson hold. "No, you don't, Raditz. You will not harm my family ever again," Goku growled out. "Piccolo, fire whenever you're ready," Goku called out as Raditz struggled against his hold. "Good, Goku. Just don't let go this time," Piccolo shouted as he continued to charge up his attack, his veins pulsing and his fingertips starting to periodically spark with golden light. "Kakarot, let go of me." Raditz continued to struggle against Goku's hold. "You would kill your own brother." "I already said it, you're no brother of mine," Goku responded. "And after that stunt you just pulled, I'm not going to let myself make the same mistake twice." Raditz, realizing that it was a dead end, decided to try changing tactics. "You'll die too. You'll kill the both of us if you don't let go," his voice starting to sound more and more desperate. Goku gave a cocky little grin. "If that's the way it has to go, then so be it." Piccolo's voice cut in before Raditz could say anything else, calling out, "Goku, it's ready." Goku closed his eyes and cried out, "Do it!" Raditz, realizing his imminent demise, struggled harder than ever, but Goku refused to let go. Special Beam Cannon, Piccolo rang out and let loose his attack directly at Raditz and Goku. The force of the attack lifted the pair into the air. It pierced the front of Raditz's armor and continued through, piercing Goku's chest as well. Raditz cried out loudly in shock, pain, and rage. Goku let out a long sound of pain through clenched teeth as he tried to hold on despite the powerful attack ripping through his torso. The attack was over almost as quickly as it began. The bodies of both Raditz and Goku fell to the ground. Raditz, with what little life he had left in him, cursed. "Damn it! Killed on a backwater planet by a green bean. At least Kakarot, the traitor, died with me. I wouldn't be too sure about that." Piccolo stood over Raditz's defeated form. "On this planet we have something called Dragon Balls. They can grant almost any wish. Most likely Goku's friends will use them to bring him back to life." Piccolo was surprised when, after he got over his initial shock, Raditz let out a choking laugh. "Thank you for that useful bit of information there." He coughed up so blood before continuing. "It may be useless to me, but my scouter not only allows me to track power levels, but also act as communication devices." Piccolo's eyes widened as he realized his error. "So that means—" Raditz choked out another laugh. "My Scion comrades heard everything. They'll come here for your precious Dragon Balls, and they will avenge me. And they're more than twice as strong as I am." Piccolo staggered in shock. How long?" he managed to ask. Raditz gave one last smirk. 1 year. 1 short year." He coughed up some more blood. "My only regret is that I won't be there to see you die." He started giving out a pained cackle. Piccolo cried out in rage and raised his remaining hand. Raditz was dead. Meanwhile, in the air above, a capsule car arrived on the battlefield. Bulma began bringing them in and Rashi asked, "Well, what's happening down there?" Bulma gasped. "There's only one still standing." Krillin, who was still cradling Goji, who had thankfully passed out at this point, asked, "Who is it?" "It's Goku, right?" he ended hopefully, praying to Kami that his best friend was okay. Rashi let out an exclamation, "It's Piccolo." Soon enough the car had landed. Piccolo retrieved his turban and cape as Krillin handed Goji to Bulma and raced over to his fallen friend's side. Goku was, thankfully, not quite dead yet. "Hey Krillin, good to see ya," he coughed. "Goku, save your energy. Just hold on, we can get a Senzu Bean," and Krillin was cut off by Goku. "I think it might be too late for that, Krillin," he coughed again. "But hey, you can just use the Dragon Balls. But until then, keep an eye on Chi-Chi, Gohan, and Goji for me." Krillin blinked in confusion. "But what about Goken?" He then came to the realization when he saw the sad humor in Goku's eye just turned to complete and utter sadness. Krillin withered. "Oh, Kami, Goku," he choked out. Behind him Bulma gave a sob and Rashi hung his head. "Yeah, bring him back too when you wish me back, okay, Krillin?" The light in Goku's eyes started to die out. "Yeah, we will, buddy, don't you worry, we'll get the Dragon Balls," Krillin promised his friend. Goku's eyelids dropped and he gave one last small and sad smile before one last sigh left his body. "Goku?" Krillin whimpered out. "Goku!" He called again, slightly louder. "Goku!" He cried out one last time, putting all his despair into that last shout. As Goku's friends mourned his passing, they were suddenly bewildered to watch his body disappear. What just happened? Bulma questioned, staring in shock at where her childhood friend's body had just been. "Probably that old windbag Kami." The trio jumped startled, having forgotten that Piccolo was still there. "What do you mean Piccolo?" Rashi asked. "I mean he probably brought his body to Otherworld so he can receive special training," Piccolo said matter-of-factly. "But why would he need special training?" Bulma asked, confused. "Because there are 2 more Scions on their way. They'll be here in a year. And they're both more than twice as strong as this one was," Piccolo explained. "What?" Goku's friends cried out as one. "Piccolo, how do you know this?" Rashi asked. "He told me right before he died that the device on his face also acts as a communicator," Piccolo explained. He then got a look of deep concentration on his face, growling a bit. Just as Krillin stepped forward to ask what was wrong, Piccolo let out a loud shout, causing the trio to jump back, and a new arm sprouted out of his stump. Piccolo flexed his new arm, staring at it for a minute before walking over towards Gohan. Bulma, realizing that Goku had just made them his children's guardians until he was revived, shouted out, "Hey! Get away from him, we're not going to let you eat him, you big green monster." Piccolo scooped up Gohan in his left arm. "I'm not going to eat him, you idiot," he growled out. "I'm going to train him." At the looks of confusion he received, he elaborated. "This boy unleashed a massive power against the Scion. If we could find a way to tap that power, we could use it against the other Scions." Piccolo's eyes traveled over to Goji, who was still unconscious in Bulma's arms. Krillin stepped forwards and decided to take one for the team. "Look, we're not letting you take Gohan, he should be with his family, not with you." Piccolo, however, was ignoring him and looking at Goji, and thinking Raditz did say there weren't many things more dangerous than a Scion child. If this one is strong, perhaps his sister has some power as well. Piccolo smirked at Krillin. "Oh yeah?" he asked. Krillin, who was slightly nervous now but was honor-bound not to back down, said, "Yeah. Well then I better take some of said family with me." With that, Piccolo used his telekinesis to float Goji out of Bulma's arms, her hat falling to the ground yet again, and into his outstretched palm. "When you wish back, Goku," Piccolo cried out as he flew into the sky. "Tell him he can see his kids again in 1 year's time." And with a laugh fit for a supervillain, he flew off into the distance. The trio on the ground stared into the sky after him before Rashi said, "Well, who's going to tell Chi-Chi?" Krillin and Bulma shared a glance and simultaneously gulped in terror. Meanwhile, in Otherworld, Kami and Goku were just finishing up with King Yemma. King Yemma leaned on his massive fist. "Oh, all right, I suppose I can allow you to travel Snake Way, but we warn the trip will be long and hard." "Thank you, King Yemma," Kami said with a bow before turning to Goku. "Prepare yourself, Goku. This journey will be a most difficult one. There may be times you will want to give up," he told the Scion of Earth. "Don't worry, Kami," Goku declared. "If it's the Earth at stake, I would do anything to save it." He put a finger under his chin and looked down. "Though I will admit a whole 10,000 miles all by myself does seem a bit daunting." Kami gave a small chuckle. "Well, it is a good thing you won't be all by yourself then." Goku gave Kami a confused look. "What do you mean, Kami? Are you coming with me?" "No, my friend, I will be returning to Earth to help train you friends for the coming battle. But let us just say I may have been able to pull a few strings up here." Kami gave a smile. Before Goku could contemplate what he meant by that, he heard a loud childish voice echo across the check-in station. "Daddy!" Gohan woke up underwater, also with lungs full of water. He came up spluttering and started gasping for air. He heard some similar coughing sound next to him and looked to see Goji in a similar state. After surfacing, he noticed a few other things. First off, he was in the middle of a shallow pond. Secondly, that big green man who was at the space pod behind him and his daddy was nowhere in sight, and thirdly, he felt like he was missing something. He was left with an ache in his head. So based on the situation, he did what any self-respecting 4-year-old would do. He began crying for his mommy and daddy. Goji, having also noticed the situation, began doing likewise, and the area was now filled with the cries of two very upset and confused monkey-tailed children. "Shut up, you brats!" The brother and sister paused and looked up at the tall green man as he glared down at them. Goji was the first to speak. "Where's Daddy? And where's Goku? Where are we?" Piccolo glared a moment longer before explaining things to them. The fact that their father and brother were both dead, and that two more scions much stronger than the one that had killed their brother and caused the death of their father — he might have forgotten to mention he did the actually killing of their father — were on their way to Earth. He also explained that he planned to train the sibling duo. He did not get the response he was looking for. Nope, instead he got more crying, only louder and more frantic this time. "Listen, brats," Piccolo shouted out, gaining their attention once again. He pointed at Gohan. "You showed incredible power against the Scion today. If we can find a way to use that, then it would be useful against the other Scions once they arrive here on Earth." But I'm not strong. I can't fight." Goku was always the dash. He broke off and looked like he was about to start crying again. Goji about to follow. "Not strong, eh?" Piccolo continued quickly, not wanting to put his sensitive ears through any more tantrums. "Well, let me show you just how strong you are." He now picked up Gohan by the back of his tunic and chucked him at nearest Mount Air plateau. Goji began freaking out and Gohan was screaming his lungs out. But as he neared the plateau, he threw his arms out in front of him, and then there was a bright flash of light. The onlookers stared in surprise at the massive crater that spread from where Gohan sat to where the plateau had been and out into the distance. But neither of the viewers were anywhere near as surprised as poor little Gohan was. Did I do that?" Gohan stuttered out as he stared out at the ruin he had caused. Piccolo walked toward him and Goji followed after, not wanting to be left out. "Yes, you did, and we're going to learn to control that power," Piccolo stated, looking down at the hybrid child. Piccolo then had the two take off their tunics, which thanks to their mother they folded quite nicely. "Not that it would really matter. Now then, to make sure I'm not wasting my time with you two, I'm going to leave you here to survive for 6 months. If you manage that, then I'll train you up close and personal." Piccolo smirked as he saw terror dawn on the duo's faces, but he felt something deep down that he couldn't quite place. Regret? He didn't have time for this right now. So despite the begging and crying of the kids, he flew off to commence his own training. Or at least that was the plan. After he was high above them, he thought perhaps he should stick around a couple of days just to start them off. He couldn't have them dying immediately. Then that would remove any chance of using them against the Scions. He definitely did not feel any concern for their safety. Back on the ground, Gohan and Goji were not in the best place mentally or physically. "Gokun's gone," Gohan sobbed out. "Daddy is gone too, and we're here alone for 6 months. We don't have any food." Goji was crying quietly too until she looked behind her and survival instinct kicked in. "We don't have any water." "Gohan," she tapped her brother's shoulder with her tail. "Where will we sleep?" "Gohan," Goji raised her voice a bit. "There will be wild animals." "Gohan," Goji said loudly. "Huh? What is dash?" He turned around and came face to face with a large dinosaur. As one, the two turned and ran away, screaming loudly as a large apple-colored dinosaur chased two nut-scented aliens. "Sorry, I couldn't resist XD." As they ran, Gohan took the lead, but then tripped on a rock, and Goji then tripped on him, causing them to land in a heap on the ground. Goji turned around and screamed, but suddenly they weren't on the ground anymore, and there was no dinosaur in sight. Gohan was curled in a ball, and Goji was tempted to join him, but out of curiosity went over to the rock edge and looked down. They were on a mountain. How the HFIL did they get up on a mountain? Gohan, who had realized they were out of danger, now joined his sister at the edge. "How did we get up here?" he asked in shock. I don't know, we were down there, and then suddenly we on a mountain. Goji answered his question, exasperated. And it was on this mountain the two living sun children would stay for the next day or so until the night of the full moon. But meanwhile in Otherworld, Goku and their father were currently running down Snake Way, or more accurately Goku was on Goku's shoulders and Goku was running. Though not much was happening up here right now, so let's go back to Earth for the time being. The night of the full moon saw Gohan and Goji sitting across from each other brainstorming ideas on how to get down. During a silence in between ideas, Gohan was thinking mainly about the events from the other day when Raditz had kidnapped him and Goku. I miss Goku, he thought to himself. True, he and his brother were basically opposites, but that didn't mean he had any dislike toward his brother. I miss Goku too, Goji said. Gohan looked up at Goji in shock. What? He asked. You said you missed Goku. I miss him too. She blinked at him, confusion on her face. But I didn't say that out loud. I thought it in my head, he told her. Goji opened her mouth to respond that he wasn't making sense, because she clearly heard him say it, but paused, looking to Gohan's left. Huh, she stared. You have a shadow, but it's nighttime. They blinked at each other before turning to their right and standing up. They stared in mute wonder at the full moon. Gohan broke the silence. Wow, a full moon, I've never seen one in person before. Me neither, Goji said, tilting her head and blinking. Suddenly the pair stood at attention and their eyes became blank. They began twitching in time. High above them, floating in a sitting position meditating, was Piccolo. He looked down at his charges and became confused at how they were acting. His confusion turned to a mix of terror and shock as the two quickly grew into gigantic monkeys. What the hell? He cried out as the mountain shattered beneath them. The monsters, formerly known as Gohan and Goji-san, then began a rampage on the surrounding area. Nothing they came into contact with remained standing for long. What is this? Piccolo shouted out as a massive beam came from Gohan's mouth and tore through the landscape, leaving destruction in its wake. If they keep this up, there won't be an Earth left to defend. Piccolo suddenly flashed back to Raditz talking to Goku. Raditz had got very upset at Goku after he had found out he had lost his tail. He had also mentioned something about the moon and true power. The moon! He shouted out loud in realization. He then turned toward it and charged up a blast in his hand. With a roar, he sent a yellow beam hurtling directly at the moon. In a flash of light that lit up the sky, it exploded. When the light dimmed, there was nothing left where it had been. The demi-scions, without a constant stream of Blutz waves, now turned back into their little 4-year-old bodies. Albeit now they were completely naked. Yeah, at this point someone should really call child services, but hey, who needs them? We got Piccolo here. And technically he's only 8, so that means he can't be a child molester. Probably. Speaking of him, he floated downwards and landed next to the 2 half-breeds who were passed out on the ground. He was breathing heavily. Damn, if these 2 managed to do this much damage, I'd hate to see what 2 full-grown scions could do. Well, now that the moon is gone, so we won't have to worry about that. He reached out and grabbed Gohan's tail to yank it off, but paused. Raditz had used his tail to throw Krillin into a house. Perhaps these 2 could use their tails in battle as well. An extra limb could certainly be a surprise to an opponent. So he let go and now pointed his hand out. An orange GI resembling his father's appeared on Gohan alone with a sword. Goji got a purple GI in similar fashion, but instead of a sword she got a spear. Just like your father's, Piccolo smirked. But instead of his mark you have mine. I've helped you 2 enough already, he continued aloud. I have my own training to do. And with that, he took off into the air, flying away from the island to begin preparing for the incoming threat. About a month had passed since Gohan and Goji had woken up on the ground in completely new uniforms and with their own weapons. After figuring out how to use their new weapons, they had started putting them to good use hunting. Today we find the siblings on the metaphorical edge of a new stage of their wilderness survival. Also hanging off the literal edge of a cliff. Think he'll see us? Goji asked Gohan, hanging off a branch with her tail. I dunno, I can't tell if he's up there, Gohan said, hanging off a different branch with his hands. He looked up toward the nearby top. Where'd those dumb pipsqueaks go? A very loud, gravelly voice rumbled. He's still up there, Gohan said, looking straight again, eyes wide. Said very loud, gravelly voice belonged to a large rhino man wearing samurai armor. He glanced around, glaring over the cliff edge but not considering looking over the edge. Gar, I'll find them little twerps, and then there'll be a tasty snack. He lumbered off away from the cliff. After the footsteps faded away, Gohan and Goji climbed back up and stared after the large footprints leading away. Hey Gohan, Goji eventually asked her brother. Yeah Goji, he asked, blinking at her. She looked down for a second before glaring her brother in the eye. I think we should do some training ourselves. What? Gohan blinked in surprise. Why? Well, think about it. She tapped her foot and put her hands on her hips and leaned forward. That Mr. Piccolo wants to train us when he comes back anyway. Why don't we train ourselves so we won't have to run from that big oaf next time he shows up? Also, we can show Mr. Piccolo what we can do. Gohan looked down and thought about it before gaining a determined look and bringing up his fist. Yeah. He looked after the footprints again. But we should probably go the opposite direction of that guy. Goji looked over too. Yeah, we probably should. And with that, the two siblings jogged away. A few days later, the two had fallen into a routine. They would get up and go get a breakfast of some sort, usually fruits or berries. Next, they would do some running through the woods to get warmed up. After that, they would spar for a little bit. Their technique was far from perfect, but they learned how to kick, punch, and very importantly, dodge their opponents. It was one such day as this that while Goji was running through the forest warming up, she fell down a hole of some sort. At the bottom was a dark cavern with light coming from above. Goji figured that she would just look around a few minutes before going back up. Then she found the flower. But this was no ordinary flower, oh no. It had a smiling face. Howdy! It winked and stuck its tongue out at her. My name's Floey Dash. Chi-Chi talking flower. She shrieked and ran to the side of the wall where the hole was and scrambled out of there as fast as she could. Gohan, having heard his sister yell, came running over from his own laps. Goji, what's up? What happened? Goji was bent over panting, having used a lot of energy to get away as fast as she could. She tried to regain some composure and straightened up. Oh, nothing, just a, weird plant. Gohan blinked in confusion but shrugged. Okay then, come on, let's go. And with that, the two jogged off. That night, the two sat around their makeshift camp in a little cave. Their boots, spear and sword were over on the wall in the back, and they were leaning against a rock with their bare feet facing toward the fire. Gohan sighed. Goji, when this is over, do you think things will go back to normal? Goji brought her knees up to her chin and dragged her finger through the dirt. Honestly? I don't know, Gohan, I really don't, but I hope they do. She looked up the cave roof. I really do. Goji woke up with a start. The fire was nothing but a few cinders now, and Gohan was asleep right next to her. She frowned deep in thought. She couldn't really remember what the dream was about, only that it had a wrongness about it. Like a bad omen. For the seance? She wondered. But as she watched the burning cinders, she wasn't so sure. But she was sure for one thing. Things wouldn't be normal for a very long time. If ever. Goku had no idea how long they had been on Snake Way for. He lost count after he counted to 10. It had got boring pretty fast. Occasionally he had managed to convince his father to go faster and get a bit ahead and rest for a little bit so he could get a workout catching up. But for the most part, he just stayed on his father's shoulders. Then they finally saw it. The end of the road. Literally. Snake Way just ended in a snake tail. Huh, but I don't see anything. Goku trailed off, looking around. There. Goku saw it and pointed up in the air at the tiny planetoid he had spotted. And with that, Goku leaped into the air towards the tiny planet floating in the sky. But as they neared the planet, they were pulled down extremely fast, slamming into the ground, Goku being a few feet away from Goku. Goku struggled as hard as he could, but he just couldn't get himself off the ground. He was able to turn his head a bit and saw his father following a monkey around. Well, things just got weird. Then he saw the blue guy. He wasn't that tall, but he was taller than himself. He had a weird-looking hat with two antennae sticking out of it. He also had on round sunglasses and was wearing a weird outfit with a symbol on it. After a brief conversation with Goku, the blue man pointed his hand at Goku and he felt a warmth inside his chest. Suddenly, it didn't hurt so much. He pushed himself to his feet, still with some difficulty. He blinked at the blue man. He was pretty pudgy too now that he had a better look. "There we go, can't have you lying around now," the blue guy said in a nasally voice before turning around and snickering into his hands. "What did you do?" Goku asked, looking at his hands in confusion. "Oh, just gave you a bit of energy, you should be able to move around now. But it won't be permanent, so I suggest you work on that a bit," the blue man explained to him. The monkey Goku had seen his father following and copying now stood off to the side, bouncing up and down a bit while making monkey noises. Goku now explained to King Kai, as it turned out the blue man was, why he was here and asked him to train him. "Pretty please." "Very well," King Kai said, his glasses flashing. Goku was about to leap for joy until the Kai said, "I will train you if you can tell a joke that makes me laugh." "You're joking," Goku's father said, staring at King Kai blankly. "No, but you better get to that if you want me to train you." The Kai looked at Goku again. "Also, if I'm training you, why's he here?" Goku blinked, then responded, "Well, he's my son and he kinda died too, so..." "Heh!" Goku rubbed the back of his neck. "Oh," King Kai said, "well then let's avoid that topic. Now you must make me laugh if you want me to train you, so go on." Goku's father crossed his arms and looked like he was thinking really hard. Seeing this, Goku decided to look around a bit. He started walking towards the little house. He peeked inside but didn't see much, just a living room really with some doors to other parts, nothing all that interesting. He came back outside in time to hear his father yell something about a chicken. Whatever that was about. He looked around the little planet. There were a few trees that he could see, as well as a road that seemed to loop around the planet and a shiny car sitting on said road. He heard more shouting from where his father and King Kai was and looked over to see the Kai pounding on the ground laughing. He smiled to himself, looks like Dad can tell a funny joke. "So you have to train me now, right, King Kai?" Goku asked the laughing blue man. The Kai pulled himself back up, snickering a bit before calming down. "All right then, I'll train you, but first you have to get used to the planet's gravity. So how about this? To actually start training with me, you first have to catch bubbles." Goku looked at the monkey. "Really? But he's just a monkey." King Kai snicked. "Oh, but he's quick. But if you're so sure of yourself, go ahead and grab him." Goku looked on as his father leapt for the monkey, only for Bubbles to dodge and scurry away as fast as his little legs could carry him. "Oh man," Goku said, staring after the monkey before following in hot pursuit. Goku watched as both his father and the monkey raced around the little planet. He looked at the Kai. "So what do I do while we're here?" King Kai put a hand to his chin and thought for a second. "Well, for starters, you might want to jog around a bit and get used to the planet's gravity. That'll be helpful. Then maybe I can practice my jokes on you." He grinned, his eyes flashing. Goku turned and watched Bubbles to evade his father's grab yet again and sighed. This was gonna be a while. So with that thought, he jogged off along the side of the road, circling the tiny planet. Back on Earth, Piccolo had returned to where he left Gohan and Goji. He faced down the two 4-year-olds who were noticeably more courageous than the last time he had seen them. Both of their outfits had sustained some wear and tear damage over the 6 months. Their hair had grown out as well. Gohan's reached farther down his back and Goji's reached her legs. "So then what is your mission?" Piccolo asked firmly. "To defeat the Scions," the sibling pair said, sounding determined. Piccolo smirked. "Good, let's begin." Our chapter begins on the scene of Piccolo training Gohan and Goji. It had been about a month since Piccolo had started hands on training the siblings. The three were going at it with both Gohan and Goji trying to bring down their green mentor, and not that he would admit it, they were actually doing a pretty good job. Goji threw a punch at Piccolo's head, while Gohan aimed for his torso with a kick. Piccolo dodged Goji's punch and jabbed her in the gut, knocking the wind out of her, and grabbed Gohan's leg and swung him around, throwing him into a nearby rock. Goji recovered and launched herself at her mentor with a flurry of punches toward his upper torso and head. Piccolo raised his arms and moved quickly to block, dodge, or redirect all of her punches. He was so focused on her that he almost hadn't noticed Gohan picking himself back up and coming at him from behind with a kick to the head. Almost being the key word there. He quickly moved out of the way, causing Gohan to sail into his sibling, knocking them both to the ground. Gohan, Goji said disdainfully. You're supposed to be attacking him, not me. Sorry, Gohan said. I wasn't expecting him to dodge. Piccolo decided to use this as a teaching opportunity, kicking each of his young charges while they were distracted. Never take your eyes off your opponent, he called out as they got up. The two picked themselves off the ground and glared at their mentor. You go left, Gohan asked his sister. Only if you got right, she responded, and with that they nodded at each other and launched themselves at their mentor once again. Piccolo once again found himself hard-pressed to defend against their onslaught. He was being forced to use one arm against each of them as they attack him from two sides. With Piccolo focusing on their fists, Gohan decided to throw in a kick to Piccolo's leg to try and knock him off balance. Piccolo wasn't expecting the sudden kick and lost his footing, allowing Goji to get her punches through Piccolo's defenses, Gohan jumping up again and joining her. Piccolo now being assailed by the half-Saiyan duo and was having a difficult time getting his defenses raised again. He then noticed something hanging behind Gohan and smirked before shooting an arm out and grabbing the tail. The effect on Gohan was immediate and he flopped like a ragdoll. Goji, not having expected her brother to suddenly drop down in the middle of an assault, lost her momentum and allowed Piccolo to make a similar move on her. Now holding the two lame children, Piccolo looked from one to the other before growling and dropping them to the ground. The two slowly picked themselves up. That wasn't fair, Gohan thought. Yeah, it wasn't, Goji said, bringing her tail around and softly stroking it. Piccolo and Gohan both blinked at Goji. Huh, was the simultaneous response. Goji looked confused. What Gohan said, that it wasn't fair grabbing out tails. I was agreeing. Piccolo looked at her, mirroring her confusion. He didn't say anything, he told her. Yeah, he did, Goji said, stomping her foot, glaring out her mentor with a very Chi-Chi-like look. Right, Gohan, she directed at her brother. Gohan flinched under such a similar glare to their mothers before collecting himself. Mr. Piccolo's right, Goji, he told her. I didn't say anything. He trailed off, looking thoughtful, putting a finger on his chin. But that's not right, she whined. I definitely heard you say, that wasn't fair, Gohan. I didn't say it though, he reaffirmed. But, he cut in before Goji could start berating him again. I did kind of think it. He rubbed the back of his head at his own answer. Piccolo's eyes widened before narrowing. I wonder, he thought before focusing mentally and poking at Goji's consciousness. That doesn't make sense, Gohan. How could I hear your thoughts? Goji asked angrily. I don't know, Gohan defended himself. But I didn't say anything, but you said you heard me. Piccolo's eyes widened once again and stared at the little girl in shock. Her potential for telepathic abilities was incredible. It seemed she was already unknowingly linked to Gohan and another, but the other was a dead end. Alright, their brother, he was dead. That would certainly explain what happened to Gohan when he died. Losing a connection like that was incredibly painful. Most likely, if the connection had been an open one, he would have been in a much more damaged state. Gohan showed some potential as well, but not like his sister. Seemed the connection was a complete circuit. They were both linked to each other and their late brother. This could be useful. He didn't have time or the skill to properly instruct Goji to use her mental abilities in battle, but he knew he could at least instruct the both of them on how to communicate with each other. It would be useful for the two to be able to work out battle plans without saying them out loud for their opponents to hear. Now, how to properly explain this to the pair? Okay then, brats. I think I figured out what's going on. The siblings looked at Piccolo expectantly. It seems you two share some sort of telepathic bond. You also shared it with your brother, which explains what happened when he died. Goji is more in tune with her abilities than you are, Gohan, which is why she's been hearing your thoughts. Piccolo smirked. Now we're going to work on training this bond. If you can use it in battle, then you'll be able to communicate your intentions without your opponent knowing. Wait, we're telepathic? Goji asked with more than some shock. Gohan nearly perfectly mirrored her look of surprise. Piccolo sighed. Did I not just make that clear? Now come on, we need to find somewhere a bit less open so you two can focus without distractions. Some time later, Piccolo had found them a cave, which happened to be one the siblings had used during their training but decided not to bring it up. He had them sitting cross-legged with their eyes closed. Okay, now he told them, assuming a similar sitting position. Clear your minds. After a few moments he said, now look for a connection. Something that's there but not you and has always been there. There should be two connections. Try for the one that is still strong and stable. Goji noticed it first. A mental pair of doors that she had never noticed but were always there. One seemed almost new but the other looked old and beat up and the handle was broken. So she opened the first door. Piccolo watched his two charges as they suddenly jerked and sat straighter. Gohan? Goji thought. Goji? So I guess it worked. Gohan sent back. Mr. Piccolo, Goji said, opening her eyes. I think it worked. Gohan too opened his eyes and nodded his head. Both siblings felt a bit strange, but it didn't feel bad exactly, just different. Well then, Piccolo said, I suggest you make good use of this next time we spar. King Kai's planet. HOOH. A voice yelled out quickly, followed by, darn it. Goku sat under one of the planet's few trees, hands supporting his head, as he watched his father chase Bubbles the monkey around. This was boring, plain and simple. After a few weeks of jogging, he had managed to be able to walk normally on the small planet. Unfortunately, King Kai seemed to want to tell jokes than train. He had managed to get a few basic routines out of the guy after making him laugh with some jokes of his own. Knock-knock jokes couldn't be beat. But that and some weighted training gear of his own was all he had managed to get for the moment. And as Bubbles was currently preoccupied with his father, he couldn't try catching the monkey for himself. You could do some more jogging, a nasally voice said behind him. Why? He asked angrily. I can already move around normally here, and you won't teach me anything. Well, yeah, you can move around normally, but you still get tired pretty quick. The Kai told him. Hey, that reminds me, what did the guy with no arms say to the guy with no legs? Goku gave him a glare worthy of the devil himself. Air. Maybe now is not the best time. He coughed into his hand and turned towards Goku, who was still chasing the monkey around. So what did you do for fun at home anyway? Why don't you just do that to entertain yourself? King Kai asked him, sounding genuinely curious. At home, I'll either explore the forest or play with Gohan and Goji. He looked at the ground. He missed them. They're your siblings, I'm guessing, from the similarity of the names to yours and Goku's. The Kai looked at him. Yeah, and well, they're not here. Not that I would really want them to be, meaning they would be dead. Goku said. I get the idea, King Kai said. Then an idea came to him. Say sometimes siblings who are born near each other can contact each other telepathically. I mean, it's stronger for twins than anyone else, but if you're around a year, I might be able to help you set up some connection so you can communicate with them while you're here. King Kai explained to him. Goku looked up at him and blinked in surprise. Really? He asked. Well, yeah, assuming you were born within a year. King Kai started. We're triplets, actually. Goku cut in. Oh boy, King Kai thought. Goku must have his hands full with 3 little kids, especially if the other 2 were anything like this one. Well then, King Kai said, it'll be a bit difficult given the difference in realms, but I should be able to work with it, especially considering your closeness. Can you really make it so I can talk to Gohan and Goji from here? Goku asked skeptically. King Kai laughed. Kid, I'm a Kai, of course I can help with this. So how do we start? Goku said, eagerly leaping to his feet. Well, calm down and come on and I'll tell you. We should probably go inside. It can get a bit distracting out here. King Kai said as Bubbles zipped by, closely followed by Goku. Okay then, come on. Goku ran past him and into the house. Well, the kids certainly got enthusiasm. King Kai chuckled and followed behind him into the house. Back on Earth, Piccolo, Gohan and Goji had turned in for the night and were sitting around a campfire. Both Gohan and Goji had quite a bit of wear and tear, so to speak, but Piccolo wasn't spotless either. The 2 Saiyan hybrids were pretty tired and were about to go to sleep. Then they felt a similar sensation to the one when they had opened up their mental connection and heard a voice in their heads. So is this working? Can you 2 hear me? I don't think it's working. The brother and sister quickly sat up and stared around in shock before looking at each other. Gohan was the first to send a mental communication to their latest addition to the mental link. Goken? Yup, coming to you from the land of the dead. The voice now identified as Goken said. Speaking of, it's not that bad up here. I don't look much different except I have a halo now. Goji ground her teeth. You idiot. What were you thinking getting killed like that? A sound that could be identified as a chuckle came through the link. Well, I didn't plan on it, you know, sis. And he was actually aiming for Gohan and I pushed him out of the way. Gohan looked really downcast at that, and the emotions must have filtered through the link a bit because Goken continued. No, Gohan, do not blame yourself. It was my idea to push you out of the way. He paused. So how's mom doing? We don't know, Gohan sent. We haven't seen her. What? Anger came through the link into Gohan and Goji minds. Why not? Well, Mr. Piccolo took us for training, Goji said matter-of-factly. You mean the same Piccolo who was the bad guy in all of Daddy's stories and still scares Mom? Goken asked rather dryly. He's actually not that bad once you get to know him, Gohan sent. And I like studying, Goken sent. And Goji wants to be a housewife. He really isn't, Goji sent. I'll take your word for it for now, but if he hurts you, Goken said, still feeling pretty protective of his younger siblings. We refine Goken, Goji sent. But we are pretty tired. Can we get to sleep and talk to you tomorrow? But what am I supposed to do? Goken whined. Don't you need to sleep too? Gohan asked curious. Sometimes, but not as much as I did when I was alive. Gohan sent before laying back down, Goji following. We'll talk to you tomorrow then, I guess. Yeah, I'll be here. Not much else to do. I'll tell Daddy you said hi, Goken sent. Hey Goken, Gohan sent. Yeah, bro? Thank you for saving me, Gohan sent. Hey, what are big brothers for? Love you and you too, Goji. Talk to you tomorrow, Goken, Goji sent. I'll be here. General POV, came house. Really, it was impressive the first couple of times. But at this point, it's just redundant. Bulma was complaining as the set of 7 Dragon Balls flashed in a way that mirrored the anticipation of most of the group. Speak for yourself. It's a lot more impressive when you're this short, Oolong muttered, shoving his hands in his pockets and kicking the dirt with a pout. It wasn't fair. That midget Goku had shot up like a weed and here he was the same height as ever. And he couldn't fly like Poir unless he changed into something like a bat. Bulma smirked at him. Everything must be impressive using you as a measuring stick, she teased relentlessly. Oh, like you're one to talk, the shape-shifting pig snapped bitterly. Quit it. Master Roshi cut in before the argument could degrade any further. Let's just summon the dragon and wish Goku back. The old man walked forward and set down his cane. He dramatically raised his hands over the set of magic orbs and chanted, Arise, might Shinran. Come out and grant our wish. The sky went dark across the world. Golden lightning flashed as a pillar of light rose from the 7 magic balls. Within moments, the pillar had taken form in the shape of a great dragon, the beast's head floating 100 yards above the quartet on the ground. I am the eternal dragon. Speak your wish, and if it is within my power, I shall grant it. Shinran announced quite dramatically. Even though he had said the same words many times before, you would think he would have time to think of some new material in between summonings. Before anyone else could say anything, Oolong spoke up. Hey, eternal dragon. Do you think you could maybe destroy the Scions that are on their way to Earth right now? Oolong, Bulma growled threateningly. What about Goku, you dumb pig? We can just bring him back next time. You know, when the world isn't in danger of ending? Oolong complained. Bulma had to accept that was sound logic but was still pretty cross about Oolong just blurting that out. Not to mention they had to wish back Goken along with Goku. No way was she going to try explaining to Chi-Chi why her husband and son weren't coming back for another year. I cannot grant that wish, the dragon announced, regaining the attention of those below. The strength of those Scions exceeds that of Kami and therefore my own. Thus that wish is beyond my power to grant. Oh fine, in that case I wish you would bring Goku back to life, Oolong said with frustration evident in his voice. He was really hoping he could claim to have saved the world twice. At least he had still saved it from that purple midget way back when. You idiot! Bulma had time to shout before the dragon's eyes flashed red, and a humming noise shook the air as the magic took effect. Your wish has been granted, the almighty dragon proclaimed. No, wait! Bulma shouted in panic, but it was too late. Farewell! Shenron vanished and the dragon balls shot into the sky and flew off in a flash of light. What's the problem now? Oolong complained as the other 3 inhabitants of the island turned to glare at him. We were supposed to wish back Goku and Gohan with that wish, Poor muttered, glaring down at the pig. The shape-shifting pig looked confused for a second before realization flashed in his eyes. Oh yeah. Oops. But hey, like I said before, there's always next year, right? He chuckled weakly, clearly realizing his mistake but refusing to own up to it. Oh certainly. Master Roshi nodded sagely, causing both Puar and Bulma to look at him in confusion. I'm sure Chi-Chi will be very understanding of that when you explain it to her. His glasses flashed dangerously. Oolong froze as Puar and Bulma giggled at his punishment. Yeah, Oolong. I'm sure Chi-Chi will be happy to hear why her son is staying dead for another year. The poor pig remained silent as he contemplated his fate. His only hope now was that the Science would succeed in killing all of them, lest he would be forced to face the wrath of an angry martial arts-trained mother. To be honest, he wasn't sure which he preferred. Gohan POV, Wasteland Mountains. Arg! Goji roared as she pummeled the nearest cliff face with her tiny but extremely powerful fists, chunks falling off with every blow. Gohan couldn't particularly blame her, but he was keeping a better lid on his anger this time. Goku had contacted them mere moments ago and alerted them that due to someone, he didn't say who, wording the wish badly, only their dad was going to be brought back to life for now. Meanwhile, he would have to wait a whole year before he could do the same. Well, that she seems to be taking it pretty well. He heard Goku's voice through the link. Maybe you shouldn't have told her? Gohan sent. And let her find out when Dad shows up without me? Yeah, I think she should work off her anger now rather than later. His brother sent. Maybe you should try to talk to her? Gohan asked. I keep trying, but she keeps demanding I tell her who messed up the wish so she can either beat them to a pulp or throw them at the Science as a projectile weapon. Among other things, Goku explained sullenly. I don't exactly blame her, Gohan admitted. Oh, me either. In fact, I want to do the same thing, unfortunately. His brother trailed off, frustration clearly bleeding through the psychic connection. I get it. Gohan nodded physically even though Goku couldn't see him. Just focus on the bad guys for now. I'll be back before you know it, Goku announced with false cheer. Gohan gulped as the link with his dead but not gone brother shut off. He was nervous about this. In fact, nervous barely covered what he was feeling right now. His outfit now looked like Piccolo's did but without the cape and turban. He also had a white headband. Goji wore a similar outfit, but instead of a headband she had a white tie around her hair to make it into a ponytail, rather than have it hang it a spiky mess like Gohan's. He sighed and went to calm down his sister. They had to be ready for what was coming and she couldn't get distracted even if she was angry. Gohan had managed to calm down Goji and explained to Piccolo that the Science were almost there. Piccolo then used his powers to clean up the siblings. Be on your guard, he said looking at them. This will be tough, but this is what we trained for. Right, the two said in unison. Moments passed as they felt the two terrible powers come down onto the planet, dread welling up in Gohan's gut with each passing second, but he did his best not to let it show. He had to be strong. For himself, for Goji, for Mr. Piccolo. Everyone was counting on him. And then one of the power levels surged and Gohan felt thousands of smaller power levels vanish in an instant. That's them, Piccolo announced even as they felt the tremors from the massive blast, hundreds of kilometers away. What do we do, Mr. Piccolo? Gohan asked his mentor. Raise your power levels, he told them. That way they'll come to us instead of just destroying everything in their path. Wait, there's another power coming fast, Goji said in worry. I thought there were only going to be 2 of them. Suddenly the power made itself known as it came to a stop nearby. It was a short bald man with 6 dots on his forehead and an orange martial arts GI. Hey Piccolo, the fighter said, looking up at the once Demon King. I see you've gotten stronger. So have you, Piccolo noted, nodding his approval. But still the fight is out of your league. I suggest you go home before you get hurt. Hey, I've been training for his, Krillin told Piccolo, and if the Science win there will be nowhere to hide. I'd rather go down fighting than cowering. Fair enough, Piccolo said. During this exchange Gohan and Goji had been examining the newcomer. Gohan's eyes widened in recognition. Hey, I remember you. You were at the reunion. Krillin smiled and stood proud. Yep, I trained with your dad when we were kids. Goji blinked, then snapped her fingers. I remember. You're Krillin. Dad told us about you. You're the one who trained really hard to make up for being short. Krillin crossed his arms and narrowed his eyes. Wait, Goku said, what now? They're here. Piccolo suddenly cried out, looking into the sky. Sure enough, two figures were hovering in the sky, but they quickly descended, landing across from the Z-Fighters. So these are the ones putting out those power levels? Nappa asked. So it would seem, Vegeta told him before he glared at the warriors of Earth. I'll give you this one chance. Tell us where the Dragon Balls are and we'll make your deaths quick. We'd never tell you where they are, even if we knew, Piccolo said to the Scion Prince. But for the record, they won't be usable for the next year anyway. Really? Vegeta asked. Well, I don't believe you. Then his eyes narrowed. That voice. You're the one who killed Raditz, aren't you? That would be me, Piccolo said, narrowing his eyes. What? You want an apology? A Namekian. Well, that makes much more sense. Nappa said. No way these Earthlings could take down even a weakling like Raditz. Weak? Krillin asked nervously. Yes, that would certainly explain the Dragon Balls too, Vegeta said. You must know where they are. Tell us. I don't know where they are, and I wouldn't tell you if I did. Piccolo regained his composure after the shock of finding out he was also an alien. Well, we tried the easy way, Vegeta said in mock sorrow. Then an idea occurred to him. Hey Nappa, we have any Cybermen left? If I'm correct, there should be about 6 left. Nappa pulled out a vial from a hidden pouch somewhere on his armor. Oh, what do you know? We got 5 of the normal bugs, Vegeta, and 1 copy man. Oh, now that makes things even more interesting. Vegeta smirked in a way that sent shivers down Gohan's spine. The Z-Fighters present watched in abject horror as Nappa planted the little seeds in the ground. A few moments later, 5 small little green creatures, and a similar one colored black and gray that were vaguely humanoid, sprouted out of the ground and began making a variety of animalistic sounds. Vegeta stood smirking before his scouter beeped, and suddenly there were 3 more fighters on the battlefield. There was a tall, scarred, bald man with 3 eyes, a small doll-like thing, and another man wearing an orange GI with wild hair. A brief conversation occurred among the Earth fighters. Tien, Kairatsu, and Yamcha had sensed the arrival but were farther away from the spot than Krillin and thus had taken longer to get there. I thought we were only facing 2 Scions? Tien said, looking at the opposing group. Things change, Piccolo stated, having earlier removed his cape and turban. Well, 2 or 100, I don't care, Tien said, glaring at the enemy. Hey Vegeta, how come so many of them are bald? Nappa asked, inspecting their opposition. Oh, I don't know, Nappa. How come you're bald? Vegeta directed at him. I just wax, Nappa claimed, looking away in what might have been a pout had the man not been so intimidating. Pot calling the kettle black, Tien muttered. Well then, Vegeta said, smirking. Let's have some fun, shall we? You send your strongest fighter, and we'll see how they compare to the copy man we have here. He gestured at the black and gray creature that started trembling in what Gohan could only imagine was excitement. We're not playing your sick game, Piccolo declared, angrily clenching his fists. Funny. You say that as though you have a choice. Vegeta narrowed his eyes dangerously. No, you either send someone to fight or I order all of them to attack and kill one of you, and I will repeat this until you are all dead. I'll fight, Tien declared, stepping forward. Are you sure, Tien? Krillin called to the Triclops. Kairatsu looked on in concern. As Tien and Krillin spoke, Piccolo called mentally to Goji and Gohan. Be ready to fight. We have no way of knowing if these Scions will keep their word here. They might start attacking the rest of us if they decide that they're bored. Right? Gohan and Goji nodded physically even as Tien got into the Crane School's fighting stance, and the copyman hobbled forward to face him, swinging its arms as it walked, a sadistic grin on its scrunched-up face, veins in its head bulging grossly. For a moment, the only sound was the wind as the two faced each other down, neither side making a move. And then, with a sound like thunder, the battle to decide the fate of the world began. Goku POV, King Kai's planet. "I hate this," Goku complained as he glared out over the horizon of the small planet and along the great length of Snake Way. His father had left some time ago to make the long journey back, and he had opted for staying here while he made the journey rather than needlessly going back to the check-in station. It wasn't like he would be coming back to life anytime soon. His only communication to find out what was going on in the world of the living was the link he had with his still living brother and sister, but he had been having trouble getting into a proper contact with them, mainly getting feedback of different emotions. Probably because they were so focused on whatever was happening, meaning the battle had started and he had no idea what was happening. "Well, we could tell our funniest jokes to pass the time," King Kai suggested, causing Goku to glare at him. The Kai now took stock of the mood and shook his head in distaste. "Geez, take a joke, would you, kid?" Goku pouted and turned away. It wasn't fair. And he didn't mean the fact that his siblings had gotten martial arts training along with his father while he was here. He was a bit sore about that, but he was also a lot stronger, considering most of his time here had been spent on endurance training in order to properly move around without relying on the Kai's power to keep him from being flattened under the planet's gravity. No, he was upset about the fact that he was stuck here, dead, while his family and friends fought for their lives against two beings far stronger than his jerkface of an uncle. And he had no idea what was happening. He was brought out of his thoughts by King Kai coughing loudly. "Look, if you want to know what's going on, I can just show you." That got his attention. "Really? How?" he quickly demanded. "Ugh. Kids these days so rude. Maybe I shouldn't tell you." King Kai turned away and seemed to be about to leave. "No, wait," Goku quickly shouted. "I'm sorry. Please, show me what's happening on Earth." "Well, I guess I could." King Kai decided, an odd look of satisfaction on his face. Not that Goku understood that. He was too eager to find out what was happening to his little brother and sister. "How?" Goku asked again, still lacking the information. "These things aren't just for show, you know," King Kai said, pointing at the two antennae coming out of his head. "I can see just about everything with these. Just place your hand on my back, and you'll be able to see whatever I'm focusing on." Goku did so as fast as he could. Normally, he didn't like getting too close to the Kai because he thought he smelled kind of weird, but he was willing to make a sacrifice for this. As soon as the boy's hand touched the godly being's back, he instantly saw what was happening on Earth. Just not with his proper eyes, but rather with his mind's eye. When he saw what was happening, his presence seemed to disappear as he focused on the fight on Earth. General POV, Wasteland. The copyman had made the first move, striking forward with its claws outstretched. Tien had been waiting for the little black and gray creature to make the first move, in hopes that it would display an opening for him to exploit. As it turns out, he was given multiple openings to use against the strange plant-like fighter. Its leap forward had left virtually all sides open, not even attempting to condense its form or maintain a decent block. Whatever this thing was, it clearly wasn't born with any form of muscle memory. Before the claw could reach him, Tien shifted his stance, grasped the gray arm, refusing to allow himself to react to the slightly slimy texture, lest he be forced from his focus. Using the creature's own momentum, he used his other arm to help readjust the leap and send the monster crashing into the ground below with almost all of the force it had been charging at him with. The ground fractured under the crash, forcing Tien to leap away from the breakage or be left on, quite literally, shake ground. The copyman had focused entirely on its initial lunge and was unprepared to both miss its target or collide with the ground. This caused it to meet with slight damage as it carved its way into the rocky floor of the area. All this occurred within less than 2 seconds. Gohan and Goji, who had never experienced real combat before, were shocked at the speed of the two fighters. Although they could move just as fast if not faster, they had never seen it in action before, or at least not from the sideline. Normally they were either in the fray or about to leap back into it. Not to mention that Piccolo hadn't actually been trying to kill them, even if he was extremely harsh on them. The other Z-fighters, as well as the Scions and their Cybermen, were for all intents and purposes unimpressed with the combat capabilities of the two in action. Vegeta was, however, slightly curious at the clear improvement of the Earthling fighter. The regular Cybermen were roughly the strength of Raditz, and the Copyman was more so. And yet, this human was able to keep up with the artificial warrior. What kind of training did they put themselves through in order to expand their power this far? But despite his initial success, Tien was quickly finding out that this would not be a simple fight. While he clearly had more skill and experience than the creature he was fighting, it was shockingly strong. To the point where he wasn't sure if his skill would be enough to put it down for good, considering it had immediately pulled itself out of the ground and gone back on the offensive with no time to spare. It fought with the grace of a drunken brawler but with the strength of a weathered fighter. It left little doubt as to why the Scions had these creatures on hand. As many as they could create, without their strength they had nothing else going for them. Against untrained fighters or large populations they must have been incredibly useful. Stupidly following whatever orders were laid down for them without question, and with their intimidating appearance to demoralize their opponents, they were perfect for the kind of missions these Scions apparently did. Nevertheless, strength difference or not, Tien was not about to give in to this artificial warrior. He was a true warrior, and he wasn't about to let this fake bring him down just because of its strength. It lacked tactics and strategy, and that would be its downfall. Knowing that, he leaped backwards, letting loose a flurry of ki blasts in order to gain some distance. Most of the blasts missed, but they created the desired distraction that he needed. When his feet landed back on the ground, Tien looked deep into himself, called force his ki. An aura of white light surrounded him, and a scream escaped his lips as the power surged through him in a rush. The Copyman, who had already been moving forward again to restart its unorganized assault, paused and gained a look of confusion for a moment. It was as though it could not contemplate the fact that its foe had an inner strength that itself lacked. The pause did not last more than a second, but Tien had already taken advantage of that, moving fast enough to leave an afterimage behind and surging forward to slam his fist into the creature's vein-covered head. But rather than being met with the hard bone of a skull, his fist sunk into the gray material grotesquely. Once again Tien forced his disgust down, knowing that in a battle the slightest bit of weakness would be used against him. Although he was not sure if this specific opponent would know to capitalize on it, he was not willing to take a chance. Without losing his momentum, the Triclops martial artist proceeded to roundhouse kick the creature away, sending it crashing into a nearby rock formation. Moving for a potential finishing move, he took a stance and pointed his finger at the debris. The tip lit up and he shouted the attack name. Dodone Ray. One of the Crane School's signature attacks launched itself forward in a beam of sparking light. It collided with the Copyman just as it leaped out of the rock formation, already coming back to the fight, even having sustained significant damage. The flash of light that resulted from the collision of the Dodone Ray and the Copyman temporarily blinded those on the sidelines, Tien having closed his eyes briefly but pushing his other senses to the fullest just in case of a surprise attack. When both the light and smoke cleared, the now thoroughly charred Copyman was twitching on the ground, still desperately trying to continue its assault. Truly, the determination shown by it was impressive but lacked all form of rhyme or reason. Tien, still keeping his guard up just in case the creature on the ground managed to make one last desperate assault, turned towards the two Scions. Vegeta maintained a neutral expression, betraying none of his true emotions while his partner looked aghast. How could he have defeated the Copyman? He was the strongest one we had. Well, maybe your little freaks aren't quite up to snuff. Maybe next time you won't let them overestimate themselves. Tien said calmly. The Copyman had managed to push itself up slightly, but was still in no position to continue fighting. It was almost enough to feel sorry for the creature. Almost. Noted. Perhaps I should make sure the lesson sinks in. Vegeta now smirked and held his palm out and open towards the Copyman, uncaring of its distress and refusal to give in. His smirk turned to a sneer, and after a flash of light, the Copyman was naught but ashes. Nappa glanced at his partner in surprise but said nothing. It was best to maintain a united force when confronted with opponents after all, although perhaps the point was a bit mute considering Vegeta had just apparently killed their strongest artificial fighter. The Z-fighters, on the other hand, were significantly more surprised. Even Piccolo clenched his fist rather than display a more open exclamation like the others. Krillin was the most vocal about. He just killed his own teammate. He gulped. Aren't you supposed to not do that? Gohan and Goji were a bit more affected than any of the others. This being their first battle, and not to mention the first death they had actually witnessed. Even if Gohan had been present during the deaths of his brother, father, and uncle, he had been unconscious at the time. "We're in over our heads, aren't we?" Goji asked her brother telepathically. "We?" Gohan stared as Vegeta cackled at Krillin, claiming that the copyman's death served as an example for the price of failure. If the Scions were willing to kill their own teammates, what were they going to do to them? They were just kids, they had no experience like these guys. Their dad had told them for years about his friends and what they were capable of and how strong they were. What chance did a couple of kids have? But they couldn't just give up. Mr. Piccolo was counting on them. The others would be too soon enough. The entire planet was at risk here. If they didn't help fight, then who would? "We have to do this. Mr. Piccolo's counting on us. Goku, Dad's friends, and Dad too. We can't just turn and run." Goji remained silent for a moment as she dealt with her own emotions on the subject. She remembered all the times her mom had tried convincing her that she should be around the house, helping with chores instead of running around after her brothers and causing various amounts of trouble. She had always wanted to get away from those duties, but she wasn't sure this is what she wanted. She didn't want to hurt people, never mind kill anyone. But like Gohan said, there were people counting on her. All right, she agreed, hardening her will for whatever came next. Tien was debating making a claim that he could continue fighting. He knew that the Cybermen were supposed to be weaker than the Copyman, but he had put a bit more than normal into that Dodone Ray in order to make sure that his first opponent stayed down. He would like to have some time to regain his stamina a bit, but if he could take down a few more of those things in order to help his friends, it would be better for everyone. But that could also leave him useless when the real fighting against the Scions themselves began. When that happened, he wouldn't be able to keep himself from helping in the battle. It was the Scions that were the real threat here, not their parade of little green men. His decision was made for him when Yamcha stepped up to the plate. "Take a break, Tien. I got this covered." "Yamcha," Tien acknowledged the Turtle School student. "Are you sure? I can keep going." "I'm sure. I can't let you have all the fun after all." He chuckled, his scarred features rippled slightly. "Just don't get too comfy. The real fight has yet to begin." "Right?" Tien agreed, moving to take his place back among the other warriors of Earth. Arriving, he crossed his arms and turned his attention back towards the battleground. The Cyberman that was to fight was already moving into position. Perhaps it was his own imagination, but it appeared to be a bit more mellowed than the copyman that he had fought personally. Perhaps the Prince of Scions had managed to get his point across the apparently dull creatures. Yamcha was the one to strike first this time, not even allowing a moment for the Cyberman to prepare itself for combat. Wolf Fang Fist. The desert bandit called out the name of his signature attack, a wolf avatar momentarily appearing around his strikes as he began his assault, lashing out with a series of kicks and punches. The Cyberman tried to dodge or block the strikes, but the enhanced speed of the Wolf Fang Fist left it wanting. For every blow that it managed to dodge, another two managed to hit and slow it down further. A strange greenish liquid dripped from the places where its slimy yet leathery textured skin split from the force of the blows. A well-placed punch sent it crashing into a heap. Yamcha stopped his assault, thinking that perhaps the fight was already over, even if it had gone quicker than the Tien's fight against the Copyman. But according to the Scions, the Copyman had been the strongest of the bunch. That served as a decent enough explanation. He was soon forced to pay for his assumptions when the Cyberman leaped back up, slashing with its claws. Yamcha was fast enough to dodge most it, but it still managed to make a small gash on his arm, drawing a tiny bit of blood. The next assault he could hardly be blamed for not having seen coming. This is due to the fact that its veiny head split open and a spout of greenish liquid splashed out. Yamcha thankfully managed to dodge the disgusting goo and watched in shock as it seemed to dissolve the ground it landed on. The creature's head sealed again and, letting out a disturbing noise that could be called a cackle, leapt forward and began its own assault on the scarred fighter, putting him on the defensive. With a well-placed kick, Yamcha managed to separate them and flipped backwards in order to give himself some space to renew his strategy. The Cyberman stopped itself from crashing by digging into the rock face with claws and looking up with a tilted head at its opponent. It let out an odd sound that came off as a sort of mixture of a gurgle and a screech before blurring into movement in a form of super speed. Not to be outdone, Yamcha immediately burst into movement as well. The two fighters bounced across the field, only moving close enough to clash before separating and attacking once more, repeating the process. The Z-Fighter's eyes flickered across the field, tracking the movements as the youngest two struggled to keep up with the display of speed and ki. Piccolo, noting that they were having difficulty keeping up, gave them the advice to see with their energy, not with their eyes. When they did this, it allowed them to properly keep track of the battle. Piccolo told himself this was because not being able to keep up would be a weakness in the real battle, not because he was concerned for the two in any way. Yamcha and the Cyberman at last slowed down enough to be seen with the naked eye, the ex-desert bandit bringing his fists together and slammed them both onto the Cyberman's head, sending it crashing to the ground where it lay unmoving. He waited a moment to see if it would get back up before following it to the ground at a much slower pace and more gracefully. The scarred warrior turned towards the Science, feeling cocky after his apparent victory. "Well, that wasn't too hard," he claimed. "Oh?" Vegeta asked, a knowing smirk on his face as he saw the Cyberman on the ground twitch. "Yeah. In fact, why don't you send the rest of your little freaks after me?" Yamcha taunted. "I can take them all on." "I wouldn't be too sure of myself if I were you," Vegeta stated, "considering you haven't even defeated your first opponent." Yamcha started but was cut off when the Cyberman behind him leapt from the ground and latched itself onto him, squeezing tighter as he began to struggle in its grip. "Get off me, you little Yamcha growled, twisting in an attempt to dislodge the creature's grip. The Cyberman screeched in an almost mocking way and its head split open again. Rather than acid though, a light began to glow before bursting forth in a flash of heat. Yamcha had time to understand what was about to happen, and a look of anger, frustration, and denial crossed his features before the light consumed him. The Z-Fighters turned away for a moment. When the light faded, they looked towards where their comrade had stood moments before, only to see him laying in a small crater, his body charred and damaged, and very clearly unmoving. For a moment, the only sound was the wind before Krillin let out a cry of rage and sadness. "Yamcha! What a fool!" Nappa chuckled, shaking his head in a mix of disgust and pity. What was a weakling like him even doing here? Dying, clearly. Vegeta joked, bringing out a deeper laugh from his partner. "Good one, Vegeta. I can't believe he thought he actually stood a chance against the likes of us, when he couldn't even survive one Cyberman." Nappa mocked the fallen fighter. "Stop it," Krillin growled, clenching his fists in rage. "Don't you mock him." "Oh, what? Was he your friend?" Nappa called. "Oh, don't feel too bad. You'll be joining him soon." "That's enough out of you." Krillin roared, his hands glowing with energy as he sent forth a massive attack towards the two Scions. The remaining Cybermen jumped out of the way, apparently leaving their masters to their fate. But rather than crashing into them, the beam made a 90-degree turn straight up, before splitting in 5 smaller beams that split off and went after all opposing force. The largest beam went back down, crashing into the Scions. The other 4 beams went after the individual Cybermen, chasing them as they tried to flee but eventually consuming and destroying them one by one, creating explosions of light and heat as they did so, kicking up dust and rubble. As the dust began to settle and rubble fell to the ground, Krillin took a shaky step out of his attack stance. "That one was for Yamcha."